And she's got these scripts that are telling her, no, do the quote unquote right thing, do the responsible thing, don't let other people down. This is your dream, right? If you don't pursue your dream, you will regret it. You will resent the people around you for it. One day your hands may have arthritis and you might not be able to throw pots anymore. If that day comes, you will either look back and say, man, I'm glad that I was so immersed in the world of pottery when I still had the health to be able to do so. Or you'll look back and say, man, I really regret that I didn't pursue that because I was so worried about keeping everybody around me satisfied. So take the class. Now, Elizabeth, we mentioned that pottery could end up being a great side hustle. And on the topic of side hustles, our next question comes from a caller whose wife's side hustle became way, way more lucrative than they ever imagined. And I just want to, before we play this question, point out to everyone that oftentimes we have these limiting ideas or limiting beliefs, these scripts in our head, invisible scripts. And oftentimes when we hear side hustle, many of us immediately think gig economy, driving for Uber, I work an extra 25 hours a week and I make pennies. A lot of us think about scraping the bottom of the barrel, and it sounds like a lot of work for not a lot of payoff. That's not what we're ever talking about when we say side hustle. When we say side hustle, we mean you are building a business that is all your own, and you're starting that business on the side, but it'll grow and it can become far more lucrative than you ever imagined. And so that's the situation our next caller has.
So I will not borrow money from family, credit cards, banks, or even my own retirement accounts. A HELOC, maybe, since that's kind of like having a mortgage on our current house. That just seems kind of silly too. I do have an idea, which I'll share with you next, but my real question is, if you were me, how would you go about this? I was thinking about doing an 80-20 type loan, which many people have done to avoid PMI. The 80% would be paid off with the sale of our house, and the 20% mortgage would then become our one and only mortgage that I can work on paying off as fast as I can. I'd love to know if you have a better solution. Signed with love, Steve and Vicky Stewart. P.S. If you answer this question on the show before we sign the contract, I'll buy you both a Spindrift.
No, I do. Now that I've heard myself say both of those out loud, because when I originally heard his question, both of those plans popped into my head at once. And now that I hear myself speaking the words out loud, I do like the second plan better. Certainly there will be higher loan origination fees to pay, but I think that is a worthwhile fee for having the leeway to hold out for the right buyer.
What's interesting is I like it better too for me. I've known Steve for a long time. I think he likes it worse because of his aversion to larger amounts of debt.
And frankly, simplifying your structure. Generally, this is a tip really for everyone who's listening. Simplifying your investment structures makes you more likely to do well in the long run. I think one pitfall that many people in this community often face is the temptation to over-optimize. And sometimes over-optimization can actually be counterproductive. We've been talking about that even internally here at Afford Anything. We have some processes that we have over-optimized, and it's actually, in the big picture, I think, been to our detriment. So, for example, within our newsletter, right, we have all of these various segments. We've got 78,000 people on our newsletter who subscribe to our newsletter.
Flex.
Right? But we have a specific segment for people who are interested in learning about side hustles in small business. We have a specific segment for people who are interested in learning about real estate. We have a specific segment for people who want the podcast show notes. We have all these various specific segments. Then we've got the overall newsletter, right? And what this means is that we have to create and manage separate content for the people who want specifically side hustle content, the people who want specifically real estate content, the people who want specifically just general personal finance, right? So we're creating more and more, and what we're creating is seen by fewer and fewer, right? So rather than investing our time into creating just one thing for everyone, we're creating 4 things for 1/4 of the people.